come down the valley with me. Come down where darkness came to be. Come down, the story still told. The night the shotgun slayer took hold. Come down the valley with me. No stranger thing has happened, you see. Come down, so brazen and bold. The night the shotgun slayer took hold.
Altogether, Edward Surratt received 4 life terms plus 275 years for his crimes in Florida and South Carolina. In July 1978, Surratt confessed to Detective Townsend Tank Smith that he murdered John Shelkins. But by the beginning of 1979, both Allegheny and Beaver County authorities think it's unlikely that Surratt will face trial here. In an effort to show that the case against Surratt was still worthwhile, Jean Batto, the mother of Nancy Adams, writes to Surratt in March 1980 asking for his help in locating her daughter's body. Surratt responded, "Dear Jean, you think that you have problems, huh? I haven't the foggiest idea of what you're talking about. I don't know how you got my address, but don't try that again."
Mrs. Batto, she would call me every weekend and she would ask if anybody had ever found anybody. And for about 2 years, she called every weekend and wanted to know if any bodies were discovered. After that, I'd call her, tell her if anybody was found, whether it was Nancy or not, I'd let her know right away.
By March 1980, Catherine Shelkins had moved back into her home where the murder of her husband John had occurred.
You know, it was tough to really ever feel totally at ease. You know, she usually would sleep in the living room, even though that's where the murder happened. I think she didn't want to be back in that bedroom. I think she felt more trapped in the bedroom than she did in the living room. But after I left, from '83 till about 2000, she had a stroke in summer of 2000. She lived there. You know, once in a while I'd get a call, you know, hey, there's something, you know, there's a noise. Or one time she called me, this is kind of funny now, she kept hearing this squeak in the house. Was sure that there was a animal in there. Well, as I'm talking to her on the phone, finally I could realize it was the smoke detector battery was beeping. So, and I got good news for you. You know, that's her smoke detector battery. You know, that was the only thing. I mean, there was times when she, you know, she could get a little freaked. I don't like to hear noises only because before you're baptized by this type of action, you can always kind of like, oh, well, you know, it's some noise. You kind of, you know, how bad can it be? Okay, well, is it an animal out there? You know, I don't think anybody's really breaking windows trying to get in. Once somebody does do something like that, you know, you take noises a lot more seriously than you would have otherwise.
Beaver County drops their charges against Edward Arthur Surratt for the murder of John Shelkins in May 1980.
They decided not to prosecute up here. First of all, I don't know if they had the amount of evidence they needed. I'm not sure about that. But they also saw, well, got 2 life sentences in Florida on murder for South Carolina. I think the authorities just said, what are we going to get out of this? We may have trouble proving it anyway.
I think if they would have brought him back here, I don't know that it would have done any good for a couple of reasons. I'm sure they would have tried to beat to death the fact that my mother had said it was a white person. The only good thing would have been, I guess, for it to come back here. If they would have had a trial and it would have been convincing and he would have been convicted, I guess I would have felt better. Now, if he'd have come up here and they were able to finagle enough of these weaknesses in the case that he went free, or was one of those cases that people really weren't too sure about, I don't know that I'd feel any better in that situation.
For the family's purposes, I felt bad. I did. I felt like I would have liked to have charged him. But to be frank, if what we had at the time, without DNA, without witnesses, he'd never been able to be found guilty with the evidence we had.
Edward Surratt had terrified the area and affected the lives of numerous families who had lost loved ones, particularly the children that were left behind.
At one point in my life, I thought I'd want to ask him why. I don't think that's that important now for a couple of reasons. Whatever his reason is, I don't think I'd understand it. I don't think he was operating normally. So whatever reason he tells me is fine and dandy, but that's not, I don't know if that would give me any peace. I think basically I'd be more interested just in some details, because, you know, there's things that are always like, well, is this how you really did it? Is this where, you know, only because that's the eternal question, you know.
Death is one thing, but seeing something as traumatic as that at that young age, God bless those children.
Their trauma affects kids in so many different ways. They start to not trust people. They start to rely on their own family. They really retreat with respect to their emotions. If they're older, sometimes it's good for them to go to court to be part of the process. But in a case where it's a cold case, this is probably the most difficult type of crime for children, because there's no end result. And so oftentimes those kids feel like, I'm not going to get any answers. They feel like the system let them down. In talking with some of the families that were impacted by Surratt, when I would give them a call, oftentimes it was, I don't want to bring this up again in my life. It's a chapter that's now moved on. The ones that would open up, it was great to talk to them about their loved ones and to honor their lives and to honor what happened throughout their lives, the good things that they did, the stories that they would tell about their loved ones. That helps bring relief to survivors, to have them share those wonderful stories about their loved ones. You know, those memories are all they have. The biggest thing I saw in talking to these families was the fact that they do still want information. A lot of victims don't like to use the term closure because there is no closure. They lost their loved one. There's no getting their loved one back. But oftentimes in cases where they're cold or where they don't have all the information, by giving them more information, at least they can find that new normal in their life. And that's really the key to working with victim survivors, is helping them to find that new normal.
Our family was kind of different compared to most of them. We were already grown-ups. I was 25 at that time. I do miss the fact that, at least particularly my father's case, you know, by 25 he was gone out of my life as far as physically. You know, he's still with me every day, and you know, in ways that he taught me and things. And I realize that I'm not the only person that something like this has happened to. I mean, people lose my dad lost his father actually when he was 5 or 6. But if you compare it to that, I had my father a lot longer than he had his father. But it would have been nice to be able to enjoy that. You know, at that point you're an adult finally out on your own to an extent. It's nice to kind of feel like you're more on a peer level. Actually, my dad never saw any of his grandchildren. So that'd have been nice too.
Even though all prosecution possibilities were off the table for Edward Surratt for the time being, questions still remained. Join us for the last episode of Notorious as investigators follow up with Surratt over the next couple of decades, still looking for a clearer picture of what happened to his alleged victims.